Breaking bad news to a client takes a little bit of thought. You don't want to just jump right into it. You got to think about it ahead of time and put together a plan. Start off by thinking about your client. What are their biggest concerns going to be? They're going to be upset, and whether you're able to effectively break bad news to them is going to be dependent upon your ability to foresee what's concerning them and to deal with that. That's why you got to take some time to think about these things ahead of time. It's about planning. How are they going to feel about the situation? Empathize. Try to put yourself in their shoes. It's not enough just to say that they're going to be upset. Of course they're going to be upset. But what about the bad news is going to make them upset? Get a little bit deeper. What's changing in their life that's going to be affected? What's changing in their business that's going to be affected? What are the long-term concerns that they're going to have?
Equally important is for you to consider whether there's some sort of rehabilitation that you'll be able to do. I mean, is rehab even possible? Is it possible for you to be able to fix whatever's happened so that the relationship with your client keeps on going? Obviously, you've got to think about the details of their case here, but the possibility of fixing things is an important part of what you got to work out. And maybe most importantly is to actually put together a plan before you meet your client. Put pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, and put some sort of actual written plan together for how you're going to break this bad news to your client. Now, I've got a little bit of a step-by-step approach that you could take in order to develop that plan for breaking bad news to your client.
Making my way down to my usual waiting spot. So consider how they're feeling, empathize with their position, determine if rehab can be done, and put together a plan for moving forward. As soon as I sit down, like clockwork. All right, I'll finally get the chance to talk to you now. Okay, I have a bit of a roadmap for you to follow when breaking bad news to your client. There's a lot of parallels to legal writing here, so don't get upset if I use words like thesis. Tell your client where you're going from the beginning. We don't want to play hide the ball here. That's not what this is about. You're going to want to soften the blow, but beating around the bush is just going to make your client angry. Give them the bottom line from the outset, and it's a lot like a thesis. Make your claim in legal writing, make your point when you're breaking bad news to a client. Just like when you write a thesis, you want to try to find a concise way to give them a comprehensive statement of what's going on. Don't talk in circles, be direct. Once you've given them that thesis, once you've given them that understanding of where they are, then explain how they got there.
Now arriving on track 4 is the New Jersey Transit 1157 outbound train to train.
Wow, I didn't really have much time to speak to you at all, did I? All right, back at it. Explain what got you to where you are now. There's a little bit of a backstory that's going to be necessary. This is when you give it to your client. How did this happen? What occurred in the case that got us to where we are? Factually, give them a little bit of the backstory. You're not making excuses, at least not yet. You're just giving them a recitation of how you got to where you are now. The next step, just like in legal writing, is to analyze the issue. You've got to define the issue clearly. Here is where you talk about the legal aspects of the bad news. So you made your claim, you got your thesis. You talked about the factual reason that you got to where you are, and now you're going to talk about the legal aspects of this bad news. What's the issue that's involved? And then, just like in every good legal writing, you're going to make connections. You have to analyze the situation. Analyze how the entire situation affects their case, and make sure that you're honest. I don't mean that from a, hey, don't lie standpoint. Yeah, sure, don't lie. But what I mean here is candor. Make sure that you're honest and that you give them the full truth, even though it may be painful. And it's probably going to be painful. Whether it's painful for you because of a mistake that you made, we'll talk about that in a minute, or if it's painful for them and it has nothing to do with your actions, someone's going to feel pain from this. It's even more important for you to be fully candid in situations like that. And the last part of your breaking bad news roadmap is to conclude with a plan of action. Your client wants to believe that you've got things under control, that you have a sense of direction. Things may have gone bad. It may have even been your fault, but whatever it is, you need to show them leadership. You need to show them that there is a plan going forward. What are the next steps that you recommend? What can you do going forward for maybe damage control? Remember when we talked about the possibility of rehabilitating the situation? This is where you want to talk about how you're going to accomplish that. There are 5 steps in that breaking bad news roadmap, and now you can see why I'm imploring you to spend time planning. Before you even have a conversation with your client, you need to go through those steps. Tell them where you're going from the beginning. Give them a thesis. What's the bottom line? Don't talk in circles. And be direct. Explain what got you here. How did this happen? Define the legal issues clearly. Talk about the legal aspects of the bad news. Analyze how this affects their case and be honest, even if it's painful. And conclude with your plan of action. Talk about the next steps. Talk about damage control. Talk about what you together need to do to go forward. And that last part is an important aspect of it. What you both can do together to move forward. You want them to believe that you're in this together. Now, how about a few tips for your delivery? It gets so boring waiting for trains. It's just me and the birds. Can you hear them tweeting all over the place? It's like being in a bird sanctuary. You see, it's not just about the content and the substance that you talk to your client about when you're breaking bad news. The manner in which you deliver it is important. This is part of softening the blow. Now, I don't think you should sugarcoat anything. You've got to be candid when you deliver this bad news, but a little artificial sweetener never hurt anybody. Be direct, be candid, be truthful, but soften the blow somewhat. And here is a tip in that regard. They are going to come back at you and they're going to be angry. They are going to yell, they are going to scream. Maybe they don't get excited like that. Maybe they're just going to go ahead and very vociferously voice their displeasure. And you're going to have to sit there and take it. The two best words in this situation are, you listening? This is a big one. I understand. I understand. It validates their feelings. It lets them know that you're engaged. It evokes a sense of empathy, and it's non-confrontational. The other tip for your delivery is don't lose your cool and don't raise your voice. Those are sort of one and the same, I think. Once you raise your voice, you push things up to a whole other level. That's when clients go from upset to angry. Once you lose your cool, you trigger the same sort of response in your client. You don't want that happening. You need things to proceed on an even keel, not just because that's the best way to get the important information to your client, but you don't want an environment where everyone's mad at each other. It's not conducive to anything good. And this is something that you have to be super aware about. They're going to get accusatory. They're gonna point the finger at you. They're gonna get angry. They may blame you, but you can't lose your cool. Even if they do lose their cool, you need to stay present. You need to stay level-headed. And while we talk about them pointing fingers at you, well, why are they gonna do that? If this isn't your fault, this is going to be particularly aggravating. But part of our job is remaining cool under the circumstances. Sometimes your client's gotta vent. It might not be something you deserve, but that's just the way it is. Sit there, take it, let them vent, let them get it out, and then talk to them about the path you're going to jointly take to move things forward. Of course, they may be angry at you because it is your fault. Maybe you did make a mistake. The question is, how are you going to deal with that now? Should you beg for forgiveness? I'm sorry. I think the more important question is, should you apologize? It seems like an obvious answer, but it's not so much. Normal people can apologize. Lawyers, we got to think twice. See, for us, an apology could be an admission, and an admission can cause a disciplinary problem or a malpractice problem. So make sure you think about it before you apologize. Talk to your supervisor. Talk to your risk management partner. And if your team determines that it's wise to apologize, then here's an important thing for you to remember. Apologies are buttless. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. Apologies are buttless. This is not an apology. I'm sorry for what I did. But you know, if you wouldn't have contributed, we wouldn't be in this situation. Or how about, I'm sorry that this happened, but I was distracted by something else. Apologies are buttless. When you apologize, you say, I'm sorry, you take responsibility, and that's it. Remember, you only do that if it's determined that it was a smart thing to do after having conversations with your supervisor and your risk management partner. But if you do it right. I'm sorry that there was so much noise during this program. Were you able to hear all the birds chirping all around? I gotta be honest with you, it is an absolute miracle that I didn't get pooped on once.